At the surface level, we can say church history is really trying to trace the developments, the activities of figures and institutions from the first century when Christianity was introduced to the world, all the way up to our time here 2,000 years later. As central as religion has been, especially in the Western Hemisphere, the Christian faith, to be able to talk knowledgeably about past cultures, about centuries over the last 2,000 years, it really cannot be done well or accurately without taking Christianity and religious presence into account. It's such a vital aspect of life through those centuries that it has to be factored in. I think that there's a tendency, or there could be a tendency, for people to skip back over from the 21st century today back to the first century. And I understand that because we do want to practice original Christianity. God had something in mind, an intent, and when Christ and the apostles introduced the Christian faith to the world, they had something wanted to achieve. And even though I live 2,000 years later, I want to know what that is. I want to be able to participate in that, what we could call authentic Christianity. So I understand the sense of wanting to jump or being willing to jump across the 20 centuries in between. And I think that we do ourselves something of a disservice if we step over those as if they didn't happen. And part of the reason why we might do that, or people might take that approach, is because we don't necessarily agree with all of the developments that took place at the teachings of Christianity or the life of church organizations. At the same time, I can recognize, while I may not appreciate or agree with every decision that was made, I don't have to do that to realize there are also some valuable elements for me or others to take away, even in the 21st century, from things that did happen. For example, if Christianity is supposed to talk about the business of life, and in part it does, we look through history and there are people who are wrestling with so many of the same issues that people wrestle with today. How do you deal with children and rear your family in cultures that may not be very ethically, spiritually, morally healthy? And early figures would write about that. How do you try and overcome obstacles and challenges, maybe crises in personal life or loss and other obstacles? How do you overcome those things? And there are figures who address those matters, and sometimes their insights are going to be very valuable to those of us who are facing similar things today. When Christianity came onto the scene, it was not a legally protected religion in the Roman Empire. We know from the book of Acts and New Testament records, Christians were persecuted on maybe a local level, citizens in their communities and things like that. There have also been those periods in the first several centuries where Christians were persecuted because of Roman imperial orders, right? So early Christians were pressed at times to try and defend themselves and their commitment to the Christian faith, to try and make the Christian faith, to present it as it is indeed a legitimate, God's plan for humanity. And the way that I can look at some of those arguments that were put forward can benefit us today. We live in a skeptical age. Many do not agree with the presence of Christianity, think that it has no beneficial influence at all, And so the things that early Christians wrote to both try to convince their critics, but also to reinforce the confidence of their converts, those can be really helpful to us as well. So apologetic works were important then, and what they did and said can be useful today.